This is a collet chuck. It's called a speed collet. There's my collet and my stock, 3/8 of an inch stock. I'm going to pull it out a little bit, and I'm going to tighten it up, the collet. Snug. This is the release on the lathe to let go of the spindle to make it where it rotates. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off most of the stock, and I'm going to use this tool. This takes off stock really quickly. Okay, I've just bumped it up against the end of my stock on the tailstock. I'm going to lock the tailstock in place. This wheel is 1/8 of an inch of revolution. I want my bolt to be 1/2 an inch long, so that's 4 revolutions. So let's go ahead and start cutting. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 revolutions. Okay, now I'm going to make a final cut. It's a number 8, so I want it to be 0.164 inches. I'm bumping my tool just right up against the bottom of the bolt, and on my DRO, I'm going to set that to be 0. Also on my DRO, I'm going to set the diameter to be 0.164. Okay, so we're ready to start cutting now. I want to land on this bolt, so I'm going to go 6/1000ths of an inch, and I want to make it 0.25 inches in diameter. Or thereabouts. And I'm going to thread the bolt. I'm going to take off this tool that was on there. I'm going to put on this threading attachment. And all this is, it's a chuck, and it has a tool I made. This tool just spins on a mandrel, and on the end of it, it's got a hex cutout in it. And then I'll put this die inside it. Ready to make a thread? Alright, this is going to go really fast. I'm going to hold on to it with my hand. I'm going to jam it in fairly quickly onto the piece. Reverse it, and there's my thread. Last operation will be to cut it off. Again, I'm going to set my DRO on 0 and move over 140 thousandths, and I'll be ready to do my cutoff. And there we are, finished screw. The next step in making these small hex head bolts is to cut the hex head. So I did that on my mill. The first thing I did was I made a jig, and this jig is just a split piece of metal that I machined and bolted together. Then I drilled and tapped these holes. This is a 4, a 6, and an 832. Then I took my surface grinder and I ground off about, I think about 2/1000ths of an inch off both sides. So this is about 4/1000ths of an inch tighter than it was before. And what that does is when I put the bolt in there, it lets me tighten it up and it holds the bolt securely for the milling operation. What I don't want is I don't want the small bolt to turn while I'm machining it. I put the bolt inside of the jig here. You can see right now it's got a round top on it, and I've tightened it up. Initially when I was doing these, I put a pair of pliers on here and checked it to make sure it's snug, but all of them have been really snug, so I'm not going to worry about that. I've got my vise set up here. I've got a couple of parallels in here, and I've got a little stop. All I have to do is to set this block in here, push it up against the stop, and then tighten the vise. Okay, it's going to make another pass, and I did that just so I can keep some dimensional tolerances on it. This takes off just a thousandth of an inch or so. And then the last step will be to trim the top off to the appropriate height. Okay, and there's our bolt head. Now here's the same idea for the nut. For the nut, it's a little harder to hold. So what I did here was I just got a little bitty cap screw, and I screwed it into this nut blank. Used a pair of pliers and held it and got it pretty tight because it's going to be trying to back out. You don't want it to move at all. And the same thing, I'm going to put it into my jig, tighten it up, and run the program. Last thing we're going to do is cut a little bevel on the edge. So I've set this bit here for about 30 degrees, and I'll just screw this into this little mandrel. I went ahead and put it in the forejaw because sometimes the bolt isn't exactly on center, so this lets me adjust it a little bit. Fortunately, if you've done a batch of them, they're usually all about the same. So I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to barely touch it. I just barely see some score. There it is. I'm going to reset my DRO here, and I'm going to cut 15 thousandths of an inch off. All right. And if you look now, there's a little bevel on here on the edge. That's it.